I'm sorry, Mr. Masugu. I don't know whether you have any idea about what is happening, but Mr. Selega might or might not have informed you. It's going to be brief.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. No, it's going to be brief. Yeah.
Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity to briefly address you on this matter. Mr. Singh was subpoenaed today to come and give evidence. In fact, it was from today till the end of the week to give evidence in the Eskom stream. He's also subpoenaed to come next week on the Transnet stream. We've prepared a substantive application to explain to you why he can't be here today. There's an affidavit with a number of annexes, and without divulging a lot of personal information, I can basically place on record, and you will see, Chairperson, that's the last annexure, AS12. It's a letter from the specialist that was treating her. In short, she had an emergency cesarean on the 25th, and because of what transpired, she's been forced to stay in bed for at least 10 days. And those 10 days run out, I think, next Tuesday. So it's a situation, unfortunately, where client needs to take care of the newborn and a number of other things. So he can't be here today as much as he wanted to be. So our request to you is that we accept that the content of the affidavit and the annexes will be read. I know Mr. Pule has indicated to us that he accepts the content hereof. So we then ask you if we can be excused and that our client be subpoenaed for the Eskom stream at some stage, but we will be here next week on the Transnet.
Well, I will go in accordance with what you as counsel have informed me is in the papers. The tradition is that counsel, when they tell a judge what's in the papers, that is what is in the papers.
Indeed, Chairperson.
Something else, yeah.
Indeed, Chairperson.
Yeah.
I think Advocate Pule will confirm that
Yeah.
what we convey to you is
Yeah.
indeed what the factual situation is.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It seems that it is a situation that justifies that I excuse Mr. Anuj Singh. The information that was known to me based on correspondence that was made available to me was information that existed prior to the operation of the wife. And I wasn't sure that would have provided a valid excuse, but the information you have given me satisfies me. So Mr. Anuj Singh is therefore excused from appearance today.
Thank you, Chairperson.
But as you have said, he will appear before the Commission next week in respect of the Transnet work stream, and other arrangements will have to be made with regard to the Eskom evidence.
Indeed, Chairperson. May we then also be excused?
Yes, you are
Thank
excused.
you very much.
Okay.
Chairperson, we ready to proceed?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Molefe, just back to that, the opening speech, Exhibit U38.2. We might be shorter than 30 minutes.
What is the reference? What page?
The exhibit, U38.2, the opening speech of Mr. Molefe, page 7, paragraph 26.
Okay.
Yes. Chair, I was saying also that we might be shorter than 30 minutes.
To which I say, thank God.
Well,
We don't
maybe this thing of council being paid for the whole day, if they spend not less than a whole day, should be changed. Okay, all right.
Thank you. The last sentence there, Mr. Molefe, which says, well, to read it in context, Dr. Ben Gubani and members of his board understood the situation perfectly well. From them, I received a blessing to do what was right, and for that, I am thankful. Am I right that what you are saying in that last statement, you received from them to do what was right? Oh, let me rather ask you, what is it that you say you received from them to do which was right?
Yes. To analyze the situation and to handle the matter in a manner that will be in the interest of us.
Yes.
That is what is right.
Yeah. Well, we traversed this yesterday, and I told you about what the board's position, or the board's version is on this,
Yes.
that they wanted you to come back to them.
They wanted me.
They wanted you to come back to them. The minute also says they wanted you. It's given to you before it comes to the board for approval.
For what comes to the board?
The minute I read yesterday, it says the matter is given to you
Yes.
before it is placed before the board for approval.
The minutes were given to me before.
The matter.
Or the matter, yes.
Yes.
Was given to me before it was.
Before it comes to the board for approval.
Okay, let's try and clarify that. I think what Mr. Slega is referring to is that the minutes of the board meeting of the 23rd of April 2015, as he read them yesterday, were to the effect, as he understood them, that the matter was being given to you by the board, but you would need to bring it back to the board later for the board to provide approval.
Yeah.
That's what he's referring to. You remember that discussion yesterday? You remember you said you have your own dynamic interpretation of the
Yes,
minutes.
my understanding was that the matter was given to me to handle.
To deal with that.
deal with.
Yes, you said that yesterday. So what I think Mr. Slega wanted to remind you of that and then ask a question.
Yes, that the board's version, which seems to be consistent with the minutes, differs from your explanation or understanding of what you say the board wanted you to do. That's all I'm trying to.
Yes. The board, I don't think they asked me to come back for approval. They asked me to report to them what happens subsequently. And somewhere, I think in August or September, in my report to the board, I did mention what happened to the matter.
Yeah. Well, we have their version. They came here, said we wanted him to give us feedback. We had questions the team or executives couldn't answer. We said, let's refer the matter to the acting CE, and he will come back to us. When you read the minute says, refer it to him before it comes to the board for approval.
Perhaps there was a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Could it be, Mr. Molefe, that the proper way of understanding that minute might be that the board wanted you to look at the matter and recommend what should happen about it. Then once you have made the recommendation, they might say, okay, if you recommend that they should leave it in your hands, you would deal with it. They might say, okay, that's fine. Or if your recommendation was that they, as the board, must make a certain decision, then they would make whatever decision if they were persuaded that the way forward that you would have recommended would be the right one.
Perhaps, Chairperson, but that was not my understanding. My understanding was to deal with the matter. And in any event,
Deal with the matter to finality.
yes, in any event, this was such a serious matter that would have put Eskom out of pocket. Not only was it serious and would have put Eskom out of pocket, it was very delicate in my interpretation of the tactics that were being employed by Optima, fear-mongering and so on. So I felt that we had to deal with the matter decisively.
Well, to the extent that you say it was a very serious matter, wouldn't that have been a reason why the board might have wanted that it shouldn't be dealt with and finalized without their involvement, but that they should know what your recommendation, for example, was as to what should be done?
Perhaps, Chairperson,
Yes.
that could be right.
Yeah. Did you have a debate or a discussion with the board about this issue prior to you terminating the cooperation agreement?
I can't recall. I may have had discussions with different members of the board, but not in the board meeting itself.
Yes. Please turn to page 5 of that same exhibit, 38.2, U 38.2. Page 5, the opening speech. The opening speech.
Which paragraph?
Page 5, paragraph 18. Paragraph 18, where it reads, moreover, I could not face Eskom employees and unions to tell them that their bonuses would not be paid, as was nearly the case in 2015, and that we had no funds to fix the apartheid wage gap between black and white employees of Eskom. While rich international corporations were unduly exploiting Eskom, as I have stated, the payments to Glencore would sunk Eskom. That word exploitation, could that be what drove you to deal with the matter, as you say, decisively?
It was not the only reason, Chairperson.
There were many. There were many.
Yeah, there were quite a few. I mean, I gave a context yesterday about my dealing with
Yes.
Glencore before at Transnet, that they were intransigent when the entire industry had agreed to this take-or-pay agreement, and that I found that this agreement was basically preposterous, and my information was that it is possibly even ultra-virus, that it was not entered into properly.
Yes, that's
We
right.
spent quite some time, Mr. Selega, on this yesterday.
Yes, no, I'm moving on to you. Then the last sentence which says, as I have stated, the payments to Glencore would have sunk Eskom. Are you able to explain to the chairperson, Mr. Molefe, why in January 2016, February to April, I think from April also to October 2016, did Eskom agree to buy coal from OCM via Tegeta?
When
Jan 2016.
we spoke about this yesterday, Mr. Slika, that was for Arnold.
That's correct.
And it was not just Tegeta. There were 6 coal suppliers. And the contract at Arnold was 1,000 and I think 90 rand a ton.
Can I clarify my question? What I'm saying to you is this. OCM owns the mine.
OCM?
OCM owns the mine.
OCM owns the mine.
Owns the mine. You could
Yes.
go directly to buy from OCM and supply to Arnold.
There were 6 suppliers that were requested to supply coal.
I'll finish.
I'm not sure where they got the coal from.
No, but let me finish.
Yes.
Because the submission for the prepayment of 659 makes it clear that they are going to get coal from OCM, Tegeta, will get it from OCM and supply Arnold.
The submission of 600?
659 million.
The prepayment.
Yes.
Or are we at the prepayment now?
I'm linking it with the interim contracts that were there in 2016, from January 2016.
The interim contracts were entered into in December.
Well,
6 of them. 6 of them for Arnold.
yeah, but
For Arnold. And we discussed it yesterday, and I said at 400 rand, they were better than the 1,000 rand that was being paid. And
I'm
then you
asking you-
corrected me and said it was not 1,000, it was 600.
yeah, but I'm
And
asking
I
you a
said
different question.
it was even better.
No, I'm asking you a different question.
Yes,
The contracts I'm talking about
yes.
are in January 2016.
The 6 for Arnold.
Tegeta, between Tegeta and Eskom, with Tegeta supplying coal to Arnold.
Yes,
That interim contract
yes,
or short-term contracts
yes,
between Eskom and Tegeta
yes.
relate to coal that Tegeta gets from OCM
Yes.
and supplies to Arnold.
No, I'm not aware that the coal came from
OCM.
OCM, Tegeta. You will remember that was the time when I was sick in hospital. So December, January 2016. So I'm aware that there was a problem at Arnold, even before I left, that the
Okay.
contract was coming to an end. But I also know that 6 BEE suppliers were contracted to supply at 400 and something. One of them was Tegeta. It's peculiar that you're not interested in the other 5, not even their names. But one of them was Tegeta. And all of them supplied at about 400, which was way below what we were buying the coal at, in a mine, in a power station, whose coal supply agreement had come to an end. Now, I'm not aware that they bought the coal from OCM, what the arrangements were. In fact, I never saw the detail of those agreements with the 6. I just came to know about it at the sort of executive level when I came back. That this is the arrangement that was done to deal with the situation at Arnold. So I can't comment about the fact that Tegeta was buying coal from OCM.
Because you don't know anything about it.
No, I was not aware that that was happening. For Arnold, I was not aware that that was the arrangement. That Tegeta would buy from OCM to supply Arnold.
Did you have any idea of where the coal they were supplying to Arnold, they were getting it from?
No, I just know that Arnold was being supplied at 400. I never went into the detail. Where are they getting the coal? Why are they getting the coal?
Yeah, isn't that rather striking?
Yes.
Strikingly strange. You know why I'm saying that?
No.
Because there is a statement you make about the president as the chairman of the company. He would have known what was happening with the transaction.
Yes.
But the chief executive of Eskom doesn't know what's happening with Eskom and Tegeta and where Tegeta is getting the coal from.
Yes.
How come?
Granularity.
Face this side, Mr. Molefe, because when you face this side,
Oh, yeah,
that
face
side,
the
sometimes I
chairperson.
can't hear it.
Granularity. Detail. So, I mean, even as I was in hospital, I can tell you that this and this and that happened. I was aware of what was happening. But if you go and ask me that, so where did Tegeta get the coal? That is the level of detail to which I never went down to. I just know that there were companies that were dealing with the situation at Arnott by supplying at 400, which was less than what we had been buying coal from Arnott at, and that what Arnott had been asking for, including the request to purchase land for them. So I'm aware of that. But the granularity, the precise detail of, so where did they get the coal and on which days was it delivered? And who was the person who signed the proof of delivery? I don't have that detail. Similarly, on this matter, company like OCM, when it is in negotiations of a nature such as we are talking about here, which is that they have a penalty of 2 billion and they are in negotiations to increase the price from 150 to 400 or 500, and if they don't, they have a hardship. That matter would have gone, the chairman would have known about it. The chairman would have known about it, and I'm saying, well, I think the chairman would have known about it because he's not naive.
What one would ordinarily have expected that if price was Eskom's issue, Eskom, which is in financial straits, as you have said, would have been to go directly to OCM and even pay a cheaper price than they would have had to pay, or
What would be?
wait, even pay a cheaper price to supply to Arnott than what they paid to Tegeta, because Tegeta had a markup.
What would be the cheaper price?
No, cheaper in respect of the figures that are given. So let me give you an example. The January contract between Eskom and Tegeta, you were paying 467 rand per ton.
Yes.
Tegeta was paying, to get it from OCM, 448 rand per ton.
Yeah.
You could have paid that 448 rand per ton
Yeah.
directly to OCM.
Chairperson, that the procurement people were paying a spread of 20 rand is something that never came to my attention and didn't need to, because
Come close, closer to the mic.
the procurement people were paying 20 rand spread because one of the suppliers was getting the coal somewhere. It's a matter that never came to my attention. I was happy with the big picture, which is that Arnott is getting coal at much less than what they were getting it from. I think that now that you mention it, if Tegeta could get the coal cheaper somewhere and give it to us, as long as they were supplying at a price that they had contracted with the procurement people. As I was trying to explain yesterday, Chairperson, price is willing buyer, willing seller. So if there was a willing buyer, willing seller at 468, and there was another willing buyer, willing seller at 440, and somebody could go and buy the coal at 440 and sell it at 468, that's how capitalism works. That's how the markets work. There's nothing peculiar about it. And in fact, it's not something that needs to be elevated to the office of the chief executive as a crisis. It happens all the time. People buy products and sell them at a higher price when they have an existing contract to supply at a higher price. There's nothing irregular about it. It's just that when they contract, the primary energy people contracted with the 6 companies. They contracted at the price. I don't know, Mr. Seliga, if Tegeta was the only one that was doing that. Of the 6
That was doing?
that were actually not mining the coal, but buying it somewhere and giving it to us at 468. I don't know. But it doesn't matter, even if they were doing it. It's just that you are interested in Tegeta
Because of your relationship with Tegeta and the owners of Tegeta, which dates way back before Transnet had IDC to establish a private bank. That's the reason. Because it seems from your explanations that you couldn't see eye to eye with Glencore, but you were playing soft gloves with Tegeta.
But I told you, even when the 6 contracts were signed, I was not there.
No, sure, I understand that. But I'm telling you why there's a focus on Tegeta, because of the Guptas.
Yeah.
And you will know from the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee.
So
that
is your story, and you'll stick to it,
No, let me.
despite what evidence says.
No.
Or so you won't stick to it.
No, I'm not sticking to any story.
No, you are. You are pinning me on Tegeta at all costs. Even when I tell you I was in hospital.
Mr. Molefe, all you need is to say that you disagree with what he's saying, and if you want to expand, you expand. Then he moves on. He says what he wants to say. If you think it has got no foundation, or it's wrong, or it's flawed, you are free to say so. Whether he sticks to it or not, but we do need to move on so that there is progress.
I disagree with what you say, Mr. Sibik.
Because on the facts, we haven't gotten anything from Eskom to explain why it couldn't go directly to OCM to buy this coal and supply to Arnold. There's no
Because I was in hospital. That's why I couldn't go to OCM in January. I was in hospital.
No, Eskom. Not you, the individual, but Eskom.
No, but you are pinning me.
Okay.
You are saying because of my relationship with the Guptas. That you're not saying Eskom's relationship with the Guptas. So you're personalizing it. And I'm telling you that as a person, I was not physically there. I understand the transaction because I'm the chief executive,
Yes.
but I was not physically there. It was not done at my bidding. I did not say, guys, you guys must buy from OCM, don't buy directly from OCM. I was not there to do that. I had pulmonary edema, which is my lungs had been flooded with water, and I was still sick.
In his affidavit, Mr. Marsden says, during that time in January 2016, Mr. Gert Opperman had told them, in respect of Hendrina, we don't need the amount of coal that had been contracted for. We need less. As a result of that, Hendrina or OCM had a surplus of coal. And it was that surplus of coal which Tegeta was buying and transporting it to Arnold.
I can't comment on that. I was not aware.
Okay, then let's see whether you can comment on this, because the impression from all of this is that Eskom went out of its way to assist Tegeta financially and do so for the purposes of acquiring OCH and to remove Glencore from Eskom. Are you able to comment on that?
No, I disagree and I can't comment on that.
Let me take it further and see whether you can comment on this. This is relative to the penalty claim. In your testimony yesterday, you were saying it didn't sit well with you that you could leave the penalty claim against Glencore and go to the Soweto residents and tell them to pay Eskom.
Yes.
So that was the hard stance taken in regard to Glencore.
Yes.
When it came to Tegeta, Eskom did not only fail to recover that 2.1 billion, not only did it fail to recover that, but it went a step further. It gave Tegeta temporary reliefs for about 13 months, in terms of which Eskom waived penalties.
Is this after I had left?
That's from January 2016.
After I had left?
You had left,
Yes, I had left. So I can't comment on it.
and that's what Eskom did relative to Tegeta.
Yeah, I can't comment on that. What Eskom did after I had left.
So that adds, you
Yeah.
would have left.
But while
But
I
the-
was there was
Yes.
no relief that was given to Tegeta on anything. While I was there,
Yeah, but when you were there,
there was no relief
Tegeta
that
was,
was given to Tegeta on anything. So I don't know why you're trying to pin things that happened after my tenure.
sorry, Mr. Molefe. You left in December 2016.
Yes.
This was taking place in 2016. The reliefs were given, the first one, from the 1st of September 2016 to July 2017. And it was given on the 20th of December 2016, after they had already breached the contract.
The relief was given on the 20th of December 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Effective, let me
Yes.
tell you,
Yes.
effective from the 1st of September 2016.
I officially took leave during December 2016 until my last day at work. I took my remaining leave. I was not at work. There was an acting CEO during December 2016.
From beginning of December.
Yes, from beginning of December.
Oh, okay. So you were not at Eskom
I was not at
physically.
Eskom.
Yeah, and somebody else was acting in your
There
position.
was an acting CEO.
Okay.
But they would already have been in breach from the 1st of September, because they retrospectively asked for that relief. Were you
Yes.
aware that they were in breach?
No, I was not aware that they were in breach, but I was not party to any discussion to give them relief.
Yeah. Now, lastly, Chair, is the point Mr. Molefe referred us to. in regard to Mr. Snehal Naiga, I went and read that affidavit.
With regard to,
Mr. Snehal,
oh yeah. Or is that the one who is supposed to have
confirmed the figures.
given calculations?
Yeah, but I think Mr. Molefe was saying confirmed the figure of 2.17 billion.
Well, if we are talking about the same thing, Mr. Molefe was saying somebody came here and was explaining how the penalty of 2, whatever the amount is billion rand was made up, and seeking to
Yes,
explain or justify it. And I think that's what he was talking about. And that's the person you are talking about as
that's
well?
correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes. We're talking the same
Yes,
thing, Chair.
okay.
I read the affidavit. I don't need to, or we can if you want to, Mr. Molefe. Maybe the
But
chair.
why do you want to read the affidavit?
No, I'm not reading the affidavit. I will explain what I see from the affidavit.
Okay,
And
all
then
right.
Mr. Molefe can comment.
Okay.
Because,
Well, if
no.
it's important to read, you can read. I just want to understand
Yes, sorry.
what the connection is
Yes,
with what Mr. Molefe said yesterday,
yes,
or
no,
what the purpose is of referring
the
to the
purpose,
affidavit.
yes. In fact, as I dropped my head, that it clicked in my mind that you're asking me for the purpose, not for why am I reading, why should I read here. The purpose, Chair, is to explain, Mr. Molefe, you would listen there, what Mr. Naiga says in his affidavit in regard to the 2.1 billion. So he puts it as a claim that could be, that Eskom could have. And that's at the beginning of the calculation. And he goes on to talk about the calculation and the errors in the calculation, that they subsequently change. He talks about the 158 million that was already charged, that had to come from that amount. It was not due, it had been deducted. And he arrives at the conclusion that, in his view, he believed that Eskom had a potential claim of 1.1 billion. The ultimate conclusion. So that's what I wanted to convey to Mr. Molefe.
Yes, remember that he said he can't comment on how they came to that amount. He was told what the claim was.
Yes.
He was told it was legitimate, and he sought to recover that amount.
Yes.
So with regard to how it was made up and whether there was a proper foundation for it, it was justified or not, he said he has no personal knowledge. All he knows is people that he believed knew told him there is this claim that Eskom has against OCM. It's legitimate. I think he said they did explain some things about it, but he was satisfied that he should pursue the claim.
Yes. No, I accept that, Chair. All I'm saying is to clarify what came out yesterday
Yeah.
as confirmation of the figure of 2.17 by Mr. Naiga. I've read the affidavit. One needs to clarify what he said in that affidavit, just for the purposes of the record. Yeah. Because even what he believed was the 1.1 billion, Eskom would be entitled to pursue on, it was still compromised. It was still reduced to 255 million. It's not Mr. Molefe, it may not be Mr. Molefe's problem, but just to place it on record. Yes.
Just for the record, Chair, the narrative has been that when I arrived at Eskom, I arbitrarily imposed a penalty of 2 billion on Optima so that they can sell the mine to Tegeta, right? What this proves is that there was no arbitrary action on my part, and that even the 2 billion was not a figment of my imagination. It is mentioned in Mr. Naga's papers. It is an amount that had been outstanding long before I arrived. So my only purpose of including it in my statement was to say that the narrative that says that it was my scheme to impose the penalty, to force Optimum into hardship. I think even Mr. Ramatlodi put it like that, that Mr. Molefe arrived there and he just imposed a 2 billion rand penalty, as if I woke up one morning and imposed a 2 billion rand penalty. The 2 billion rand penalty was properly documented. It was calculated. There may have been disagreements between the different officials, legal, engineers, and so on, and even the executives. But there was a basis of a penalty in the region of 2 billion rand. Whether eventually, after I had left, Eskom was able to recover it is another matter that I was not involved in. Yeah, but sometimes I even think, well, by pursuing the 2 billion, if what we got was 200 million, it's still better than nothing, than not pursuing it at all, because at least something went to Eskom. But I'm not expressing an opinion on that. I was not there. The 2 billion is what was on the table as what needs to be pursued, and as a responsible chief executive, that is what I did.
Chair, from the evidence, one cannot conclude that the 2.17 billion was properly documented. I think that clarification needs to be pointed out.
So you
I'm
think
sorry,
it was
just repeat the clarification.
I say from the evidence given, even from Mr. Snehal's affidavit, a conclusion cannot be made that the 2.17 billion penalties were properly documented.
But do we agree, Chairperson, that the 2.1 billion was not a figment of my imagination?
I don't know, Mr. Molefe. Ms. Daniels testified here that the opinions of CDH were drawn to you and Mr. Koko's attention, and you did not heed the concerns that were raised.
No, but it is not something that I sucked out of my thumb. The
No, that I
2.1
don't
billion.
know.
Sorry, I'm not understanding. Can I just ask
Yes,
if Mr. Slege is suggesting that
it was.
the 2 billion was in fact a figment of Mr. Molefe's imagination, because that would be totally unfair for him to continue making that suggestion when he can't substantiate it. It would be inconsistent with his own evidence. Even if he were to be wrong on the evidence he has, it does not support the proposition that he's trying to advance, which is that this was an arbitrary figure for which Mr. Molefe just woke up one day and imposed.
Mr. Slager?
Thank you, Chair. I think we are talking cross purposes. Mr. Molefe is the one saying to me, this was not a figure of his own imagination. It was not his thumbsuck. I responded to clarify what he said about this figure was properly documented. I say when you read the evidence, even this Mr. Snehal's affidavit, CDH's affidavit, you cannot come to the conclusion that the figure was properly documented. I've never gone beyond that to say whether it was a figment of his imagination or not. I'm not saying that. Then I put to him what Ms. Daniel said. Ms. Daniel said these concerns in the opinions of CDH were drawn to their attention, but they decided not to heed those concerns and forged ahead with the claim. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah,
I think it's clarified.
thank you.
Yes,
And that brings me to the end.
yes. Did you deal last time with the meeting between or involving Mr. Molefe, Dr. Ngubane, and Mr. Ramatlodi?
We did, Chair,
Uh-huh.
last time, and we touched a little bit on it yesterday. We just brushed it. But
Yeah.
I mean, for the benefit of the chairperson, that can be traversed.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I think you should traverse that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Molefe, as we talked yesterday, there are notices given by DMR in August,
Yes.
which are different from the notices given in November 2015,
Which
are different from the notices given in November 2015.
yes.
The notices issued in August, and they say the 4th of August, related to the retrenchment process that didn't follow Section
Well,
189.
I'm not sure, Mr. Selega, whether we are on the same page.
Yes, Chair.
I'm more interested in the purpose of the meeting that was the subject of divergent versions
Yes,
between, on the one hand, Mr. Ramatlodi,
yes,
I think to a certain extent, his former DG, is it Ramon?
Ramon Cha.
Yeah, yes. And Mr. Molefe and Dr. Ngubane.
Yes,
As I understand it, if I recall correctly, Mr. Ramatlodi's version was that that was a meeting where Dr. Ngubane and Mr. Molefe, maybe he said Dr. Ngubane, sought to put pressure on him, I think, to cancel or suspend the mining license of Glencore. And Dr. Ngubane and I think Mr. Molefe's version was that the purpose of that meeting was for them to ask him to withdraw notices, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
that he had issued, which had ensured that I think OCM stopped providing coal, or that's the meeting I'm talking about. And I think the most important thing is what was discussed at that meeting, really.
Yes.
What was the purpose of the meeting? Is it the purpose that Mr. Ramatloti mentioned, or the purpose that Dr. Ngubane and Mr. Molefe mentioned?
Yeah, Chairperson, and Mr. Ramakrishna.
yes, Chair, it's fine.
Yes.
If you go straight into the meeting, that's fine. It's just that,
No, you can deal with other matters.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we are,
Yeah.
you understand which meeting I'm talking about.
yes,
Yeah.
no, I am, because
Yeah.
the notices give the context to that meeting.
Okay. No, that's fine.
And I think, Mr. Molefe, you know this, because let's see his explanation.
You know which meeting I'm talking about, Mr. Molefe?
Yeah, the meeting that was talked about here.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah. No, Chairperson, I just recall that Mr. Ramatlodi, in his evidence, said Mr. Molefe was there and he kept quiet and did not say.
I'm sorry, just repeat that sentence.
He says Mr. Molefe was there and he kept quiet and he did not say anything. My recollection, actually, I do not recall exactly what was discussed. I don't even recall that Mr. Moncha was there. I recall vaguely that there was a meeting with Mr. Ramatlodi and Dr. Ngubane. However, what I did say in my statement and even in Parliament was that I found it peculiar that Mr. Ramatlodi said what was discussed there was that he should take away the licenses of Glencore, and that he said he would never do something like that. because of the problems at Eskom. When in fact, he had already done it with the retrenchment. So that specific meeting, I can't recall what was being said, but I just remember Mr. Ramatlodi's statement being odd in the sense that, but he had done that, exactly that. So when he did it and how he did it, what actually happened at that time, I'm not sure what the sequence of events was. But the only thing, and I don't remember what was discussed.
Discussed.
Maybe I was absent-minded in that meeting. As he says, I was quiet. But I just found it odd that he would so vehemently deny that he would agree, or he would so vehemently say that he would never have taken away the licenses, when in fact he had done so with the retrenchment issue.
Well, it's important when one looks at the point you make to have regard to the dates. When was the retrenchment issue that you're talking about? Unfortunately, my recollection is that none of the parties who attended that meeting appear to remember the date, or they give very different, I think, times. I think Dr. Ngubane's version, if I'm not mistaken, suggests that the meeting would have been, I don't know whether early in August or early in July, but Mr. Ramatlodi's version, if I'm not mistaken, seemed to suggest that the meeting would have been early in September or late August. But Mr. Selega might be able, as he asks questions, might be able to say the retrenchment notices were on such and such a date, and then we can take it from there.
Yes, Chair. The notices regarding the retrenchment are said to have been issued around the 4th or the 5th of August, 2015. But Dr. Ramoncha says those notices were lifted on the 7th of August, 2015, after
And effectively were withdrawn.
they were withdrawn, yes.
Those, now we refer to as notices, notices of retrenchment will normally be issued by the employer. These were notices to say what?
They are not notices of retrenchment, yes. Sir.
Yeah.
These notices, let me see what.
I think if I recall correctly, the suggestion from Mr. Ramatlodi was that the employer wanted to retrench workers in breach of some law. And those notices are notices that the Department of Mineral Resources could issue when an employer seeks to retrench workers in breach of the law.
Yeah. According to Dr. Ramoncha, he says the department suspended optimum coal mine operations in terms of the Act on or about 4 August 2015. The suspension related to concerns about retrenchment processes that were being implemented by the mine management. The dispute was attended to and the suspension was lifted on or about 7 August 2015.
Yes. Yes. So, if Mr. Molefe, okay, so that those were would those have been the notices that you say Mr. Ramatlodi
Yes.
he had already issued
That is
before?
the deed that had already been done
Yes.
before.
Yes.
he did suspend the operations. But when he came out in public, he said, I could never suspend operations because we were having load shedding. Now, Chair, the 4th to the 7th of August is 4 days before we actually stopped load shedding. It stopped on the 8th of August, 2015. So it was around that period. It was at that very delicate time. And he did suspend the operations of Optima. And so when he came out and said, but how could they have expected me to suspend this operation? I thought it was odd because it is something that he had done before.
Well, I must just say that my recollection, and Mr. Selega might check this, my recollection is that his version was that what Dr. Ngubane wanted him to do was not just suspend any license, but was actually to cancel the mining license. Is that correct, Mr.? Or withdraw the mining license?
He uses the word suspend, Chair.
Or it doesn't use the word suspend?
Yeah,
Oh,
uses the
okay,
word suspend.
okay. So then your point would come in if you say, if he had already previously suspended the mining license of Glencore, why would he have had, why would he say he could not suspend the mining license of Glencore in the midst of load shedding?
Yes.
That's the point you make.
Yes. Maybe
Yeah.
he should have given another reason, maybe. But
Yeah.
not that he could not.
Yeah.
Because he did do it.
Yeah.
So he should have said, well, it's illegal or it's contra bonos mores or whatever, but not to say that, yeah, nah, he can't do it.
Now, you say you can't recall what was discussed at that meeting, but I'm under the impression that in your affidavit, you
No, I simply say that the discussion could not have been about the suspension
Yeah,
of the mining license
yes,
in any way, because it is something that we did not want him to do. In any case, he could not say that he refused to suspend the mining license because he had already done it. So I can't recall what the discussion really was about. Chair.
yeah.
As I say, I think in that meeting I just said quietly and must have been absent-minded because I can't really recall what was being said. I don't even remember that Mr.
Ramunja.
Yeah, I have a vague recollection of this meeting with Dr. Ramatlodi and Dr. Ngubane, but I can't really recall.
Yeah.
But I can, by deduction, I can say, but it is unlikely that this was discussed.
Okay, because that's the meeting where he said, Dr. Ngubane went to the extent of saying to him, in effect, he should tell him what his final decision is about the request that he was making to him, because he needed to go and brief the president about the matter, and the president was going to be going out of the country on that day, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Is my recollection correct, Mr. Slag?
Yes, no, that is correct.
So, and he says he refused, and he says it didn't take long after President Zuma had come back from a certain trip. It looks like the president did go out of the country either on the same day or the following day. I can't remember.
Can I read it?
Was it the 2nd of September? Or,
That's a remarkable memory. That's 22 September, yes, 2015.
okay.
So I can read it to the chair.
Yeah.
It says, however, Ngubane became impatient as he advised me that he had to brief the president on the outcome of the meeting before he left for his BRICS, BRICS meeting that afternoon. I did not waver in my stance. A few weeks after the return of the president from his BRICS meeting on 22 September 2015, I was called to meet the president at his official residence. Should I carry on? When I arrived, I met Mr. Ismagashule and Mr. Mosebenzi Zwane, whom I did not know at the time, in the waiting area. I privately met the president, who thanked me for my exemplary service as Minister of the DMR and informed me that he is moving me to the position of Minister of DPSA, as there was a vacancy at the time. I then agreed and then left.
Yeah, okay. Well, what I wanted to say is it's a meeting where, according to Mr. Ramatloti, Dr. Ngubane, among other things, said, what's your final decision? Because I must report to the president before he leaves. But that might not jog your memory, but just in case it could jog your memory.
No,
It
I have
doesn't.
not recollected.
Okay, all right. Mr. Slega?
Yes. According to Dr. Ramoncha, Mr. Molefe, he places your meeting, meaning Dr. Ngubane and you, with Mr. Ramatlodi, Minister Ramatlodi at the time, in early September 2015.
30 September or 30 August?
In early September 2015.
Or earlier, so
Early
this-
September.
Yeah, as I said, Chair, I remember that meeting occurred. I don't even recall that Mr. Ramancha was there, but I don't remember the dates.
And you are not able to say whereabouts in August or September or July it might have been you.
My thought process about this thing is like one thing that happened, that there was a suspension of the licenses and of the operation, and then it was restored, and then a few years later, Mr. Ramatlodi said,
A few years or a few weeks or a few months,
yes,
few years, or when he was
when he was
speaking
in
publicly.
Parliament, just
Okay.
before Parliament,
Oh,
a
okay.
few years later. So this is when this issue comes back for the first time after a few years. And he says that, look, these people were trying to get me to suspend the mining license. And my thought was, that cannot be possible, because we did not want the mining licenses to be suspended. And in any case, he did do it. He did do it without our encouragement. He did do it. So that is on this issue,
Yeah,
that is what I remember happened.
yes.
And then I unfortunately have lost a lot of the detail around it.
I think, Mr. Silega, it's a question of just checking whether in his affidavit, Mr. Molefe said more or less the same thing. I was under the impression that his affidavit reflected somebody who had a recollection of what happened at the meeting. Obviously, that you can only get by looking at his affidavit.
it's here, I have it in front of me, Chair.
Yes,
Because I've been trying to follow him and find the passage in his
Yes, yeah.
affidavit.
yeah. What did he say in the affidavit?
He says, that's paragraph 97. Dr. Ngubane and I had a meeting with Minister Ramatlodi, where Dr. Ngubane asked him to reconsider the decision to suspend the licenses of Glencoe because of our concern about the negative impact on the security of supply of coal to Andrina Power Station and the possible impact on load shedding. We were relieved when a few days later, the suspension of the licenses was withdrawn. The next paragraph is, I was dumbfounded when in May 2017, former Minister Ramatlodi claimed that the Eskom chairman, Dr. Ngubane, and I met with him to ask him to suspend Glencore's license.
As I say, that is how I recall the incident.
Yes. It is the position that the difference between what he says now and what he said in the affidavit is that in the affidavit he seemed to remember at least one or two things that were said.
Yes, that's what I think I'm picking up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that right, Mr.?
Does that surprise you that in the affidavit you seem to have remembered
Yeah.
at least one or two things?
Chairperson, all I remember is that the licenses were suspended. There were representations that the licenses should not be suspended. And I think they happened in that meeting. I can't remember when that meeting was or what the details of the conversation were. And the licenses had been suspended. And a few days later, the licenses were restored, the operations were restored.
So if
And in fact, yesterday, I was saying that in my head, it was in the context of the threat of Mr. Glazen. So, but then I cannot impute that to Mr. Ramatlou. But I do remember that in that whole confusion, suddenly the licenses got suspended. Maybe it was, I don't know, a month and a half later or a month later, the licenses were suspended. And then I remember there was a frantic effort to make contact with the DMR and to discuss with the DMR about the suspension of the licenses and their impact on Henry. There was a meeting with Mr. Ramatlou. What I can't remember is were there two meetings?
Well, that's what I wanted to find out because
Yeah.
yesterday at some stage, I seem to understand either from you or from Mr. Selega that there may have been two meetings.
Yes.
I think from you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I can't recall properly.
But
The
if-
only thing that I remember is that the licenses were suspended and we made contact to say, please don't do that. Yeah.
If-
This issue of the president and so on, if it was mentioned in a meeting where I was present, I do not remember.
If the meeting was about you and Dr. Ngubane asking him to withdraw the suspension of the mining license, and if you accept that those notices had been issued, was it on the 4th of August and withdrawn on the 7th,
Yes.
then your meeting must have been between those two
Yes.
dates,
Yes.
which is early August.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, on your version, if that is what the purpose of the
Yes.
meeting was, then
Yes.
that meeting would have been between those two dates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, if it was about the licenses. That is the
Yes.
meeting that I recall.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
This other one, it may have happened.
Yeah.
But I don't have.
You
I
don't
recall. So I conflate them. I remember, yeah. I remember us going to the DMR office.
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting to Mr. Ramatlou's office.
Okay.
As I say, I don't even remember that Mr. Ramon.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Selega.
Yeah, Dr. Ngubane's version is that the withdrawal of the notices was done on the 11th of November 2015. He says the meeting was arranged by Mr. Molefe. I cannot remember the date of the meeting. Luckily, Mr. Ramatlou reinstated the mining license on 11 November 2015. So if the meeting took place in early August 2015, those notices would have remained in place for the rest of August, October, and the first week of November.
Dr. Ngubane says 11 November.
11 November, yes.
Yeah, I can't comment on
Yeah. Okay.
But what is also strange is this, Mr. Molefe. There are notices that are issued in November 2015, abruptly issued by the DMI. And they stay for a longer period than what you see in the first notices. But we don't have any evidence of intervention by officials like you, the chairman, Dr. Ngubane, with Minister of the DMR at the time being Minister Zwane, to reverse the imposition of those licenses, the suspensions.
Did the notices in November suspend operation
They suspended operations
at Henrina?
at various mines of,
Including Henrina?
okay, let me read from Mr. Ephraim. In the subsequent 4 days, 3 further Section 54 notices were issued to other mines in which Glencoe had an interest. And then he gives the names: Vanderfontein, Tweefontein, Goedgevonden. Copies of these sections are annexed. And the reasons provided for the suspensions are set out in the notices. The first one was Korenfontein mine, pursuant to a Section 54 notice. Yeah. 26 November 2015.
No, I was aware of the Henrina one because of our interaction with Mr. Glazenberg. So I'm not sure the other suspensions, how they happened, and how the primary energy people dealt with those suspensions.
So how did you become aware of the Hendrina one? How did you become aware of the notices in respect of
It
Hendrina?
was in the press. It was in the press. I think in my submission to Parliament, I even attached the newspaper articles. But now I'm afraid to submit them because you say they're not credible.
Say again?
I say now I'm afraid to submit them because you say they're not credible, like yesterday.
To submit what?
The newspaper clippings.
Oh no, we accepted them. You can give them to me. You can give them to me.
They are in my, I think they are attached to my affidavit.
If they are attached to the affidavit, then they are there.
Yeah.
Mr. Selega?
Yes. Well, the impression to be made, or to be, the impression, Mr. Molefe, that has been expressed in regard to this notice has been issued against Glencoe. That Glencoe, a pressure was being brought to bear on Glencoe to succumb to the offer that had been made by Obey/Digeta. And I'm saying the impression, I'm giving you a chance to comment.
No, I don't agree with it.
That in you and Dr. Ngubane approaching Minister Ramatlodi, it was in furtherance of that pressure.
I don't agree with it.
You don't agree? So that will be the question.
Okay. Mr. Masugu, do you intend re-examining or not really?
No, I don't intend to re-examine.
Yes.
Partly because, Chair, I do think that it's been a long day
Yeah.
for my client, and I do feel like it would be
Yeah.
unfair to subject him to further questioning.
Yes.
I would, though, if a smart question, which usually comes through, if something that I need to place before you, I will ask for an opportunity to do that.
No, that's fine. That can be done. Okay. You are scheduled to appear before the commission in regard to the Transnet work stream sometime next week?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, okay, so we'll see you next week.
Yes, I would like to make a statement.
Sorry?
I would like to make a statement.
Now.
No,
Then
on Monday.
you will make your request on Monday, Mr. Molefe.
Thank you, sir.
We are going to adjourn. I just want to say this, Mr. Molefe, it may be that at some stage, even if it's during the Transnet, your evidence under Transnet, it may be that we might come back to it. One of the issues that I may have to grapple with, depending on what the picture is that will emerge after all the evidence is in, is whether certain decisions about what was to happen at Transnet, at Eskom, were being made outside of Eskom, Transnet, and even government or not? And if so, who knew about these decisions, or who were participants in those decisions, and so on? One of the things I raised earlier on with you was there is this situation where in December 2010, actually I shouldn't go through it because we went through it, where either the newspaper associated with the Guptas, the New Age in 2010, says you are going to be the next boss of Transnet. And if I recall correctly in terms of evidence, you may not have applied for that position at that time. And then before you go to Eskom, then at some stage, some months before that, Mr. Salim Essa, according to Mr. Hank Bester, says, Mr. Salim Essa said, we have made a decision that the next boss of Eskom will be Mr. Brian Molefe. And then within the context of the suspension of the executives at Eskom, there is evidence. It's not unanimous, it is disputed, but there are witnesses who have said on the 10th of March 2015, one day before the board suspended the executives, a meeting took place at Melrose Arch involving Mr. Koko. Two meetings, one involving Mr. Koko, Mr. Salim Essa, and Ms. Daniels, at which Ms. Daniels was told that there would be suspension of executives and names were given. And then another one involving Mr. Koko and Mr. Salim Essa and Mr. Abraham Masango, where Mr. Masango says he was also told that there would be a suspension of executives, and I think names were given. And of course, the evidence also that I have had includes evidence where some documents that everybody seems to accept came outside of Eskom, seem to have been sent to Eskom. For example, a document or email that was saying to the board of Eskom, it should take a resolution that it would not, I think, have any business relations with certain newspapers, including the City Press. And Dr. Ngubane says he did take that and present it to the board, and the board took such a resolution. And then the manner in which the executives, the three executives who exited Eskom. It may well be that when all evidence is in, one might say maybe there were people who were outside of Eskom and outside of government, maybe working with people within government, maybe with people within Eskom, maybe also Transnet, I'm not sure, who were influencing, to say the least, decisions that were being taken. So within your context, the question might be, what are the chances that some people were planning about your life, that you go to Transnet and be Group CEO, and then you would go to Eskom and be Group CEO without your knowing, without talking to you, without any consultation. So I mentioned that just to say, as I look at the situation, I may need to grapple with those issues. And you have indicated what you indicated earlier on, but if you have anything further that you would like to say, maybe when you come for the Transnet work stream, you could deal with it.
Yeah. If I can just say one thing about that, that story, is that firstly, I'm not aware that there were decisions that were taken outside. It may well be so, but I'm not aware that decisions were being taken outside of these organizations or outside of a government. Secondly, my frustration with that narrative, with that story that you've just told, is that it does not leave me with anything to answer. Because all of those things, my name is mentioned in the context of other people talking about me. There is nowhere where it is said,
Says,
and then you
Mr.
did
Molefe
this.
said this.
Yeah, and Mr. Molefe said this, and Mr. Molefe did this, and so on and so forth. So that frustrates me because, I mean, it looks like there is I'm about to be accused, or actually things, aspersions are about to be cast on me on things that I had no control over, because from the beginning of this statement that you just said to the end, there is nowhere where you say, and then you, Mr. Molefe, you can't explain this, or you did this and you can't explain that, and so on and so forth. As I have tried to do in the last 2 days, Chair, all my actions at Eskom, for now, I think I've given a reasonable explanation to why we were doing things the way that we're doing. It was not directed from outside. It was in what I believed to be correct. And I just have a difficulty. I don't know how I'm going to deal with the fact that people were then talking about me.
Well, I don't know whether when they are planning, well, I don't know whether I should say they are planning, making good plans for your career.
No, I didn't need them for my career. As I said, I didn't need them for my career. And they never consulted me, so I'm surprised.
Yeah. But the purpose of mentioning it to you is just so that you know what I may be grappling with when I have to look at the evidence, and to give you the opportunity to influence which way one should look at it. And in part, you are saying, I'm frustrated because in all of these people, they are gossiping about me.
And my ears, Chair, is sore inside.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Yes. Obviously, the other option is if it's possible to get those answers to you in writing. The idea of coming to the commission physically is quite a tiresome process.
Yes.
It's very involving.
Yes.
So it seems to me that at the point which you reach, where you need him to confirm one or two things regarding who was planning his career without his authorization, It may well be that a good way to do it is to simply write to him and say, here is what I have. If you can give me an affidavit in response to what you need, and that would be sufficient. You don't really have time now.
Yes. No. I think what will happen is, I think I will give him the opportunity of making written submissions
Yeah.
on what I should make of the evidence I've had.
No problem.
Yeah, so that would cover that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you to everybody. We are going to adjourn the proceedings for the day. And tomorrow, whose evidence will I be hearing, Mr. Selea?
It's Miss Bianca Goodson
Yes, only
on
one witness.
McKinsey Trillion.
Yes.
Yes.
And I
Only
think-
one witness, yes.
Yeah, in the evening, I will have an evening session tomorrow, and I'll continue with Mr. Mancha's evidence in regard to Denel, just for the benefit of the public. Okay, we adjourn.